As you think about that, that field force, that team, that field team, what do you start with? What does that look like inside of a small but maybe rapidly scaling company that has probably just really kind of nailed product market fit? They've
Yeah.
really just nailed their ICP. They're scaling and changing quickly. There's a lot of evolution happening. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit, if we can, about, you know, we'll get into skill building, but first and foremost, what are the roles?
Yeah. Well, great question. Obviously it's complex and there's no silver bullet, and we
Of
know
course.
that. Um, and it's ever changing. As we know, by the way, we'll come back to why understanding or being confident that as we're serving markets, those markets and our economy and all of the macro and microeconomic elements that are out there, they change constantly. So therefore, as a company that is finding product market fit or getting ready to scale and starting to find repeatability, you can't change like them, like everybody else. You have to be aware, but you can't overreact. So usually what we find is companies that are struggling to scale and break out after they get into some product market fit, they're trying to adjust constantly to the markets around them rather than building a fundamental repeatable baseline of what people do daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly as they face the market. And then once you get that repeatable baseline in place, which could be your outbound approach based on segments, as an example. Enterprise and commercial mid-market are different. You're going to have two motions. Well, you have to baseline those motions and get really good at them before you know that you can pivot or need to pivot. And most companies don't ever focus on the baseline. They just chase the revenue. They chase the number. We all know large companies that simply exist to chase the number with limited connectivity between executive leadership and those in the field. And that is a huge flaw. It should be normalized. Translating the message from top to contributor should be normalized. And the best companies in the world are very diligent at ensuring they don't confuse their field teams and they build a repeatable cadence to serve those markets. That's what allows you to then pragmatically scale. So it's a slow down to go fast concept, which we always hear, but there are outside pressures, investors, numbers, markets. I mean, it's very difficult, but you have to be a very strong executives need to be very strong and grounded in their approach before change creeps in and takes over. We call it the pendulum swing. I've lived it. Like we've all lived it. Every 2 years, the pendulum swings. Well, usually every 2 years, you're right at the cusp of breaking out into something new. So why would you change what you're doing completely? You're starting over, and it's hard. But we're big into repeatable cadence, build the foundational elements that apply regardless of where you're going. And before you change anything, that has to all be in place. And then you
Yeah.
can choose to make a micro adjustment, but you certainly can't throw it all out and start over.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah. That's really, really sage advice. And I think, we've heard that advice about solid business fundamentals, building a repeatable groundwork that can be, benchmarked
Yes,
and measured,
that's right.
quarterly. And that way, you're informing any iteration with actual data. And
I
we
I
hear
give
that
you an
across lots of
example.
this.
I
Yeah.
can give you an example because I was on with CEO yesterday of
Yeah.
a billion-dollar telco, billion in revenue, and the 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 lack of understanding of what is happening at the ground level, um, meaning the sellers facing their customers. There's no leading indicator measure of the proper activity. It's just simply waiting and then reacting. So as an example, instead of knowing if someone is facing the right persona or unique personas in an account multiple times a week, That would be a foundational element of a high-performing field organization. Seller A has had 4 unique persona meetings delivering our message this week. That's a good thing. Seller B has had none. Well, if you don't know whether your field force of 100 or 500 or 1,000 is facing unique personas, then you have no guarantee your message is getting out to the buyers. And most companies don't even break it down to that fundamental baseline or look at what we call a balanced scorecard of activity. And it's not for the sake of activity, it's for the sake of purity and approach. So it's money spent. You're paying a large sales force to do something proactive. So you have to grow from the inside. Most companies they believe they can grow from the outside. Oh, we'll market and leads will come in and we'll react. It doesn't work like that. There today, and we talked about this when we met. There's so much noise in the system, digital noise, broken sequences, non-value based selling, no relationships. I have never is look, I'm old. I'm 57. I've been doing this a long time, and a lot of us have. I've never fielded an inbound call to buy software. I've purchased millions and millions of dollars of software. I've never fielded a cold lead. Like, that doesn't work. But yet today, companies pour millions of dollars into those sequences and those efforts, and it's actually wrong. Might work in the in a transactional segment, certainly doesn't work in an enterprise segment.